Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, good night, Mr. Gerry Leonard.
Good morning, Pork. How are you doing?
I'm very good indeed, and you look good. You're looking like nice and relaxed there.
Fake it till you make it. But it's a bright, sunny morning, winter morning here in New York City, and beautiful dawn here, and yeah, a little chilly out there, but we're safe in our ivory tower here.
I just want to kind of chat to you, Gerry, about yourself, really, and about the background, and a little bit maybe about some of the work we've been doing as well lately.
Yeah, yeah, it's always a pleasure. How's the new record going?
Well, we're at the point of getting close to release. We have a release date set for January 22.
Great.
And it'll be a vinyl release. And we've had a lot of fun. And I mean, we've got I think we've got the little building blocks in place we've got a fair amount of interest on social media from it. So we're very optimistic. We used your friend David Glasser as well to do the mastering. He did a great job.
Yeah, I like him. I like David. He's very transparent, but does great work.
I did an interview with him as well, and he was lovely on these topics. Yeah, I mean, well done you for all the contributions.
Yeah, it was fun to do.
Yeah, I mean, the mixes are really the production lift that on the two particular songs, Mystery and Hypnotist, was just fantastic. We were really thrilled.
Great.
Yeah. And
it gives me a chance to be in that world. I'm not always in that world of mixing, and then it's nice to kind of get in there and kind of maybe channel my friends who are great mixers and the way that they approach things, and just to kind of use them as an inspiration.
Well, it's funny because you started in a way, didn't you, Gerry, in studios and mixing and.
Yeah. I've been trying to get it right ever since. I did start when I was around 16. I got a job in a 24-track studio in Dublin, Lombard Sound.
In Lombard, yeah. I think we met there. I think that's the first time we crossed paths.
That was the kind of, it was like the weekend, rent a roll of tape and get in there for as many hours as you could kind of thing. And we all cut our teeth, really. But it was great to have access to the studios. It was great for us guys who were trying to learn. I had my bands and stuff, and that was a parallel universe, but trying to learn the studio craft,
And if I remember, I mean, Philip Begley reminded me of this. We were talking to Philip the other day, and he said, "Oh yeah, say hello to Gerry." He said, "Give him my love."
Yeah.
And he talked about some of the sessions with Those Nervous Animals in Lombard and stuff, and you've been around and zooming around the place, I think, at that point.
Yeah, I loved working with Philip. Philip was head engineer there for a while. And always striving to make the place better. He would come in and play these recordings, that he really liked, and whether it was, Steve Gadd on drum sound or and there'd be lots of talk about how to get that snare sound and how much toilet roll to wrap up and gaffer onto the head. So whatever, take the heads off the toms, put them back on, like in a lot of ways we had a lot of the gear, and we had some of the expertise, but we didn't have those real insider trade secrets that was going on, maybe a little more cutting edge in New York and in London. So we were always trying to, reverse engineer those things, Paul Thomas too. Philip was great, like I say, and he did try and take it out of, there was another standard in the studio, which was like, get it done as quickly and cheaply as possible, overcompress it, stick it out, was fine. And then there was the kind of like, no, we have to make this like international standard.
Yeah, I remember that feeling and wanting listening to other records that we loved, Gerry, and thinking, how did they get that? How come we're not getting that? But and then we're in this fantastic band with Donald, Hinterland.
Oh, Hinterland, yeah, yeah.
I mean, and that was a real revolution in a way, in lots of ways, the writing and sound and.
Yeah, I think that was a culmination of things where I'd cut my teeth in bands, and Donald had as well. And we were both frustrated with the process where trying to hold the band together. Young men in their 20s, I mean, they just kind of like wander in and out like it's a revolving door, and it was generally the drummer leaving, either be breaking up with the girlfriend or getting a new girlfriend, or she'd be telling him not to hang out with those guys. But so when Donald and I got together, it was more like he had one of the first Porta studios when they came out. So he'd been big into the home recording, and I had this background in recording and whatever gear I could get my hands on. So we kind of put those two things together and did these demos as a duo. And that's how we got signed to Island. Our A&R meetings were guys getting off the plane and coming down to Donald's house. And we had the spare room set up as a studio with a bit of gear in there. And there was barely room for 4 people, but we'd kind of cram in there. And then we'd play them the new demos that we'd made, which we were super influenced by, Prefab Sprout were out at the time, the sound of those records, the more modern, the Talk bands like Talk and stuff, but also the Waterboys and we were kind of like striving for that. And so we'd come up with this sound, and I think it was obvious to the labels, like, here it is, So we got signed on the back of that, which was, as you say, maybe a little bit of a revolution in terms of there weren't that many kind of like studio bands or more like, project bands or whatever you would want to call it, coming out of Ireland. It was much more like 4 guys in a room. So this was like 2 guys and a bunch of gear. And, it had its own share of ups and downs. When it came to playing live, we were a little handicapped because we had to put a band together, and we hadn't grown the material that way, so we had to kind of like try and catch up a bit that way.
Like
we
Wayne Sheedy play with you for a while?
Yeah, we had Wayne then come in on drums. So we wrote all the demos with our new RX5 Yamaha drum machine, which was state of the art. But Wayne came in on the record, and he'd had some experience. He'd had a record deal with Cactus World News. Was Cactus World News?
Yeah, I knew him quite well. I remember Wayne quite well. I was good mates with him.
Yeah. So he had a couple of war stories for us, and he'd been through the mill a little bit, and he became a great brother in arms for that.
Dara Connolly is another name that comes to mind. Dara Connolly played keyboards with us with those Nervous Animals.
Dara was great. Dara came in and manned the keyboards for us when we played live. Dara was one of these, get the keyboard player, get the good guy, and it was like Dara, and maybe the other guy that was around was Jim Core, right? Did Jim Core? He probably did a couple of gigs. With us, where maybe Dara wasn't available, or we needed somebody to come in.
One of the things that we've done other talks before about Bedlam Suitcase and projects we've done together, but I haven't really talked to you much about Bowie, which is a funny thing.
Yeah, that guy.
I saw you with them a couple of times with the band. I mean, I think the last one I saw was in 2003 or something.
Was it the Point People one?
Yeah.
That's what they made the DVD from, those shows.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I recognized what you were all wearing. Yeah.
Well, that was, what can I tell you? That's a New York story. I had moved, when my band finished, Hinterland had finished, and, everything had come to a close. I was at the downward part of the sine wave, which is the musician's life, I guess. And, it was kind of like, what now? And it was either another band or move to New York, which I made the move to New York and got on the scene. And, very much the way the scene works over here is, you work with people, and if they like you, they ask you back, and they ask you to play on other projects. And so I got introduced to Mark Platy, who's a great producer engineer, and Mark was working with David, and Mark was familiar with my style. I was also trying to eke out my voice on the guitar and differentiate myself, trying to figure out like what I could bring to the table, because there was so many great guitar players here, and I felt like, well, I can't be this kind of. I need to figure out what it is, and I always had a very strong feeling about what I wanted to do with the instrument. So I was trying to do that. Mark was familiar with that, which loosely was more like the live ambient guitar.
Yeah, and, it wasn't macho. It wasn't as rockist as a lot of people.
No, I mean, I love playing a bit of loud rock and roll, but I'm not that kind of like solo for days kind of guy. I get really bored really quickly with that. Much more interested in the other corners of things, But what I had done was, with Hinterland, we'd experimented a lot with ambiences, and we'd kind of experimented with the sequence and the triggered stuff and all that. And I was kind of done with that. I wanted to figure out a way to kind of like make it happen spontaneously. Because that's when I got to work with David, that's what it became. He was looking for somebody that could cover the sonic stuff, but David's very much a live player, and he liked it to happen in front of him and in the room. He didn't like the idea that you'd go off and craft something and come back 3 hours later with everything
press the button
on. Yeah. He wanted it just to kind of like happen in this kind of more spontaneous, kind of slightly out of control, was fine. It didn't really matter. So that's how I got my start with David. Mark introduced me, and David eventually came down to I used to play this coffee house it was originally Chennai, and Chennai became the living room. Jennifer had worked at Chennai, and then Chennai kind of collapsed into itself like a black hole. The living room opened up, and it was a similar kind of venue, coffee house with a stage in the corner. And I used to play a set down there, and it was always really fun. It was 50 people. You'd stuff the place, and you'd have a really nice time, and you have your hour slot. And David came to one of those, and it was pretty nerve-wracking. But he came, and he liked what he saw. Apparently he said to Mark, "Can Gerry rock?" This was Mark, well, you can go see him. So he came, which was great. And one thing to another. I ended up on that fantastic tour. I did a couple of records with him, and then we did the reality record and then the reality tour. And I actually kind of became the MD for him then, because my friend Mark left. They needed somebody that could work, with the band and work with the music, but also work with the technical aspect of it, like the studio stuff and all of those things. It's a bit like producing records in a sense.
It must be. I mean, that's quite. I mean, my head isn't even able to absorb that one in a way. Like, it's a tough one to be in the band and to be the MD as well, I guess.
It's a double duty thing for sure. And it means you're first there and last home, and you go home with homework, and you've got to make all the calls and make all the that's. But it's okay. I was happy to do it. It's a fantastic job, But it was also great to play. I mean, it was amazing to play guitar with him and to record with him and to be on share a stage with him. And later on, we made the Next Day record. He got me involved in that.
And you got writing credits on that on there. At this point, you're writing songs with him.
Yeah. He would come up. I eventually moved upstate New York. I loved it up there, and it was a way to get a little bit more space. New York is very much about like living in a small space, so everything is kind of like piled up. And as a musician, you always have tons of gear and stuff. So the house upstate seemed like a way to go, where you could have some space and make some noise. And David then started to come up to Woodstock in the summer with his daughter went to summer school up there. So I knew he was in the area, and I just invited him for coffee. I was like, "Do you want to come over for coffee?" And he immediately turned it into a writing session. He was like, "Do you have a drum machine?" Which I didn't, but I told him that I did. And he came up. I got a drum machine by the time he arrived. And he came back 3 other times, and we wrote 3 songs, 2 of which ended up on the next day, which was a real honor.
Yeah, wonderful. Which I love that record. One of the things I really enjoyed of your vibes with the Bowie thing when I saw the show was Pablo Picasso, the intro.
Oh yeah,
It's a neat bit of business.
Yeah, that was, and that's is it, who's the song by? Is it,
it escapes me now.
I was going to say the Flaming Lips, but it's not the Flaming Lips.
Yeah.
Anyway, he threw that song at me when we were making the reality record.
I mean, he made such a change in the song. It really is a very different song to the original.
Is it Violent Femmes? No,
I don't think so.
No, Replacements. No. Anyway, and then he had this idea for like a kind of, he wanted to have this flamenco element to it. And so, I what? Nirvana? No. Voice in the back. She's normally really good with this stuff.
It's in the back of my mind. It's going to come to the tip of my tongue in a second.
Yeah. And anyway, he had this idea for like a flamenco intro. So, and then I wanted to kind of like space it out a bit. So I came up with this thing in the studio, and then it stuck. And then, and then I had to figure out how to play it live, because it kind of has this kind of sample thing. I ended up doing it with a Chaos pad, and it was a bit of a tricky maneuver, but give yourself enough rope to hang yourself. That was, if you weren't, that's kind of like my story with David. I was always kind of like asking for more rope,
Yeah.
He was like, sure, Gerry, here's some more rope. Go hang yourself with it.
And he's a nice guitar player, or was a nice guitar player, David. I love what he did with the acoustic.
Yeah, and he loved the guitar, and he always had this very very cool kind of like broad stroke riffs and stuff that he would come up with on his demos, and often would give me that part to play. Like a couple of times on the Next Day record, he would say, "Do you mind playing this?" And I was like, "No, I love playing this." And it might be this weird bar chord and just really really kind of gnarly sound and whatever, like a strong color, and it was always fun. I mean, I think he wrote the riff to Rebel Rebel.
Like, one of the funniest things about the last while was you said to me, you did the mix and you did some editing and played guitar on He Can't Resist a Mystery.
Yeah.
You said it had filled up your house like a ripe cheese.
Yeah, it was starting to take over, and you open the fridge, you're like, whoa, something's going on in here,
Well, I think that some of the edits that were done there were, the Modern Lovers. Yeah, Jonathan Richmond was Pablo Picasso. That's right.
Yeah.
I cheated.
Sorry.
Yeah, but but I just think that's sort of, there was this little outro that we had on the original song, where that the lads had come up with just in a jam session with the da 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 da.
Yeah.
What you did is you took that and you put it earlier. You made it happen earlier in the song.
Yeah, I did. I liked that. I liked it. And I know what that's like sometimes when you're in the band and something it's almost done, like after you've done all the heavy lifting, the writing, like sometimes something will just come. It's almost like you've played around with the music so much, then some lightness comes,
Yes.
And it's the outro, and it's kind of like, well, let's take that. And maybe you guys are not seeing it that way, but to me, it was like, that's really cool,
That is so true of so many situations, because sometimes when a thing is quite worked, the outro becomes like a sigh and a release, and a lot of great things happen in outros.
Yeah.
After the song is faded.
Yeah, after you've bashed everybody over the head and everybody's like laying kind of semi-unconscious, then some of the good stuff can come out. Because like, how often is it like when music it feels effortless, that's when it's really almost at its best, when it's kind of like just percolating. And if you think about great rhythm, stuff and whatever, it's always has that kind of effortless feel, like it's just kind of like cruising. We use all those terms, but it comes from the diligence of discipline and practice, and then it becomes effortless. So
that's
something to watch for.
Yeah, and I'm just to finish up, that maybe just to talk to you about what you're up to these days, or what's what's in your head at the moment.
Well, I did a couple of, we've all been locked down in this odd time. Some good has come of it. We're all getting some projects done, some stuff finished. I wrote a bunch of material that I made 2 EPs of it, of Viral Times. Very much.
Yeah, I heard that. It was lovely. Yeah, I listened to some of that.
Yeah,
beautiful.
And I was happy to do that. I've had a bit of a block about finishing my, 3rd record, because, at a certain point, the material, talk about a ripe cheese, it kind of felt like it went past its sell-by date, and yet it hasn't. But it lost the newness for me of the material, and I hadn't really captured it in a way that I wanted it to. And so it kind of was feeling like, I would joke on my gigs, I was like, this is a new song that's like 10 years old. It's still a new song because technically it hasn't been released, but it's really not a new song. And then I started to play around with this idea that, like, well, maybe this stuff just exists live and it doesn't exist in a recording. And that was a nice kind of concept for a while. I'm not sure it's really a great concept, but it's just like concept. And then, Viral Times came along. That's what I ended up calling that music. And it kind of, it jumped the queue, and I was happy to let it jump the queue and just to start and finish something. I'm doing, there's a few projects now, a few artists are doing some more involved kind of like live shows, I suppose. We did one with Suzanne at the Blue Note, where we actually put the band together and we all got together with our masks and rehearsed and played 2 shows for an online ticket. And that was pretty successful. It was nice to do that with her again, and to,
no audience, nobody, no audience.
But we ran it like a show. But you finish a song, it's just the film crews out there, I was likening it to, it's kind of like talking to yourself. Or, it's like talking to yourself. Kind of like, it's okay, but it's over in the long term. It's probably not so healthy,
It's a bit like the football. I've been watching the football, and they put this fake crowd noise up now, for the Premiership in the UK. Like, you can watch it without this, and you hear every empty voice echoing around the stadium, or you can have this and some guy fading in and out, boo, boo, with his back. Well, I can't. To be honest, I can't wait till we get back to some sort of normality that we can do.
Yeah.
We're wondering about how we're going to launch this record. Are we going to try and do something live, or?
Yeah. None of it on paper, it all seems like I'm doing a few things like that. We just did a big tribute to David as part of Mike Larson's thing. He's going to do a big show January 8 on his birthday, and he's got a real nice cast of guests. And so we took a lot of that material for the New York crew. I put together a band, and we went in the studio and they filmed us. And we're kind of doing, but it's a lot of, what would you say? I mean, we played it live, but people will add to it as it goes along, and hopefully it'll come together into this thing. I'm doing a record for an artist in Spain, but he's not going to be there, so he's going to send me his demos. We've done a few records before, so we have, and we've toured together before, so we have the kind of connection, but we're going to have to do it all via Zoom or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's not. It'll be something, and it'll be what it is, but it's not the same. But we're able to bring the musicians together at least, and have everybody play in the room together. So that's cool,
Brilliant, Gerry. Well, listen, it's lovely to talk to you. I probably mightn't even see you again before Christmas, so I'm wishing you happy Christmas.
Oh, thank you. Happy Christmas to you as well.
Good luck to everyone. Happy Thanksgiving, as they say over there in your world. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have Thanksgiving now next week, or this week.
Yeah.
Couple of days.
Yeah. And thank you again for doing this. This is fantastic. And the work on the record has been fantastic as well. It lifted everything for us at a critical moment, just to give us that bit more sort of clarity and energy. So
my pleasure.
So as I say, take care of yourself. Lovely to see you, and we'll talk soon.
Yes, onwards and upwards.
Onwards and upwards.
Cheers.